the daddy of Dark Souls, the final Kingsfield 20 years later by Iron Pineapple.
The daddy of Dark Souls. And no, I'm not talking about Miyazaki, even though, obviously, yes, him too. Instead, I'm talking about From Software's Kingsfield series, specifically the last one to ever release.
Is that PS2?
Kingsfield: The Ancient City from 2001 on the PS2, a first-person dungeon crawler. The Souls series is sometimes called the spiritual successor of Kingsfield, and nowhere is that more apparent than in this final game. So this video will not only look at those connections, but it will also explore Kingsfield: The Ancient City in its own right. This is a very weird game that most people have not even heard of, but it deserves to be talked about and looked at, especially if you're a fan of modern FromSoft. However, the final Kingsfield came out 20 years ago.
2001.
It only had some way of going back in time.
Wow, that was before Pokemon Fire Red, Leaf Green, and Emerald. Cool. I do love this intro, it's so cool. I think the intro goes super hard. I love his little caricature, his little chibi that's under my head, right? I think that it's very... His intros are very snappy. They're short, snappy, to the point, right? You have your introduction. You have your entirety of, like, what was that? 1 minute and 5 seconds. I think that it's super cool. It's super streamlined. Just looking at this, and if someone else was looking at, how would I do this? A game that nobody else has heard of, or a game that I want to explain, right? I think Iron Pineapple has just a genius way of introducing.
I want to give you the full Kingsfield experience, and part of that is the confusion you'll feel when someone says to you, oh, Kingsfield 1 is actually Kingsfield 2. So let me educate you real quick. Here's how the game's released in Japan. Kingsfield 1, Kingsfield 2, Kingsfield 3, Kingsfield 4.
Pretty linear.
Easy, perfect, love it.
Those
However,
PS1s?
this one never
Wow.
released outside of Japan. So instead, we got Kingsfield 1, Kingsfield 2, and Kingsfield 3, Kingsfield: The Ancient City. For the rest of the video, for the sake of consistency, I'll be using these names, not
Makes
the
sense.
Japanese ones. Are we good? Cool. The story for this game is pretty straightforward, so let's just cover it at the start. So basically there's this idol, the Idol of Sorrow, and it was stolen from this city, the Ancient City. Turns out, shocker, the idol was cursed, and as a result, the once prosperous kingdom of Helidon has fallen into a state of decay and disease and corruption. Generally bad stuff. So a sword master leads an expedition to return the Idol of Sorrow, but it fails and the idol is presumed lost forever as the kingdom continues to decay.
That's
But
a
then,
lot of models on
miraculously,
screen.
a hooded figure brings the idol to you, Prince Devian, a prince of a neighboring kingdom, to return the idol once and for all. And that's
So you have to think about, right? This predates 2001. This predates Resident Evil 4, how we had the Ganado scene at the cabin, but when you actually kind of boundary break or you look into the Ganados in the back, they become lower poly and like it just invokes the image of more Ganados at the cabin than there actually are. And I'm pretty sure that was just a pre-rendered cutscene. But that's, God, they really did more with less back in older games, like PS2 era, Xbox 360 era. Like, they really did a lot more with less.
game, you more or less struggling to single-handedly return a cursed idol that an entire expedition already failed to do. And with that out of the
Neat
way,
premise.
we're finally in the game. Screen 1, here we go. But first, let's look at, comparatively, how FromSoft usually starts off their games in the Souls series. Something that I think FromSoft typically does a good job at is having great welcome to the game moments. These are memorable encounters right at the beginning of their games that not only hook you in, but also set the tone for the rest of the experience.
Right.
Demon Souls. You're killing some fairly easy enemies, getting lulled into thinking, hey, this game isn't as hard as people said, and then boom, you get sat on by the boss and die. Welcome to Demon Souls. Prepare to die. Dark Souls. All you have is a broken sword as you stumble out of your prison cell. You're still learning the controls, and then boom, the asylum demon drops down from the roof. Welcome to Dark Souls. Prepare to die.
Right,
now,
exactly.
what does Kingsfield: The
Hey.
Ancient City do? You're on screen 1, you see something on the ground to your right, you take 2 steps, and then the ground collapses as you fall into lava and die. Welcome to Kingsfield. Fuck you.
The irony that I found a PS3 copy locally of Demon Souls, so I've been itching to get to that at some point because I do love Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 3. Never actually played through all of Dark Souls 2. That's something that I intend to do. I hear it's very good from a lot of people. But no, he's absolutely correct on this. Dark Souls 3, right? You can even make the Dark Souls 3 parallel here. Dark Souls 3, who do you find but Udix Gundyr, right? Yeah, absolutely. You, me, a bunch of other people know that you can just completely trivialize them by one-handing your club as a, best class, right? Your wretch, whatever it is, I can't remember what it's called in 3. The class that is like level 1, you get like a plank shield and a club, and yeah, you just one-hand that club, parry Gundyr, visceral attack him, call him good. But that first time you play through, right? it has such a cool area surrounded by coffins and sarcophagi, and Judix Gundyr, when he's down to threshold, right, he kind of phases into the Pus of Man, right? And it's such a super cool encounter. And then you go to Dark Souls 1, right? And you have Asylum Demon drop down from the roof. And yes, you can absolutely, if you're skilled enough, gank Asylum Demon. You can pick up his hammer. Or you can go, hey, there's a door over here, and then you continue, you get the rest of your kit, and then you drop down, plunging attack him, and then continue from there. Looking at Vanguard, right? It seems like you just walk in there and he can either crush you, or you can, if you're high enough skill level, you can absolutely take him out. The fact that you just can take 2 steps and the ground collapses under you is so wild to me. I think that the Kingsfield games were FromSoft kind of defining their formula. This was them, walking before they ran with the Souls series.
Kingsfield 1 had something similar, but at least there it felt kind of fair. Here it feels like FromSoft is just messing with me. And that's because they are. But I actually kind of love this because this death isn't a big deal, and it teaches you that death is around every corner.
Right.
You need to be observant, and the devs like to prank people.
That makes sense, yeah.
All right, with our first death out of the way, let's start talking about the game. So while a lot of the experience takes place underground in dungeons and caves, I think this brief introduction area on the surface is a smart one. It's one thing to tell us that the world is suffering through a cutscene, but it's another for us as the player to feel it. Things are not looking good. This little girl's mom is sick and dying in bed. This man's wife has gone missing, and then he himself ends up dying while you search. This well of healing has dried up. Monsters have seemingly overrun the area, and everything is in a state of ruin. All of this together creates a familiar feeling to the Souls games.
Right,
the atmosphere is heavy. The key word that comes to mind is bleak. This is a bleak world, and you feel that before you ever step foot into the catacombs. The people are struggling. You could even call some of them crestfallen. Yep, I bet you didn't think it went back that far, but it sure does. This is how you know it's a FromSoft game. Also worth pointing out is the lava in the surrounding areas. This stuck in my mind as an interesting choice because I couldn't think of other games that began like that. Fire or lava areas are almost always near the middle or end of games, so this subversion almost seems to communicate that we should prepare for a weird one. So
I think that that's actually a super interesting point to point out, though, because when you think about it, right? So going on the show not tell point, yes, it is one thing to say in lore dumps, tech logs, notes and books you can gather in the overworld. Oh, the world is bleak, but you get to see. The game shows, not tells you, and I'm such a huge fan of that. The game can show you overwhelming odds by RE4 surrounding the cabin. The game can show you that a lurker is able to hop on walls and fire projectiles by showing an unfortunate scientist getting caught by a lurker. It doesn't tell you, it shows you, and then you use that to infer how you're going to take out the lurker or infer how you're going to defend yourself in the cabin. And I think that's super cool. And a lot of games, unfortunately, they just default to menu prompt, graph, now you play the game. Okay, sell me on it, baby. Come on. My time's precious. Sell me a product, right? That kind of thing. On the lava levels, note that like Star Wars, right? Star Wars Episode 3, we got to Mustafar, right? Very climactic, very, just, fiery, invocative of hell in certain instances, right? Generally this was reserved for a more powerful setting or a more emotional setting, right? And it's not necessarily the first game. There's actually a video Josh Drive Hayes did, I don't remember which one it was, reviewing an MMO, and like right off the bat, you're just fighting this like archdemon, and he explains very well, and I'm paraphrasing this, he explains very well that you have a certain expectation, right? Oh, go and fight some rats in a sewer. Go and fight some, giant rad roaches or cockroaches outside in this area, right? Oh, take out a pack of stray dogs or bandits. Literal archdemon, though? Like, okay. There's a certain level of it's why like in Final Fantasy, right? 14 specifically, it's why you start off, yes, you're fighting primals and stuff, but you're not fighting, the embodiment of despair itself, right? You save that for a later expansion. You're not right off the bat fighting the Ascian Menace, right? You wait a couple expansions, right? That kind of thing. You have to bring the power level up. You have Luke in Episode 5 of Star Wars fighting Vader. It's a complete mismatch. But in 6, wow, Luke's grown up a lot, and now he's pretty on par with Vader. That kind of thing, right? So lava kind of subverts and it breaks that expectation a little bit. It's very powerful scenery, but it has to be used properly.
I took all this in. My first 30 minutes or so was spent running around with a club I found and some scraps of armor. Eventually, I made my way into the mines nearby. It wouldn't be Kingsfield without some good old-fashioned slime combat. In the mines, I found a rock that allowed me to cure the sick mother from before. And as a reward, I got my first magic spell, Fireball.
Stone?
This is the only time the game forces you to find and learn a spell to progress, since you need it to burn a spider web in your path. For the rest of the game, it's on you to find those secret areas and hidden rooms if you want more magic and weapons. Speaking of missable items, there's actually a huge one right next to the house with the mother and daughter. Right here you find the Clarity Bracelet, and for the rest of the game, you should never take it off because it's just too good. It quintuples the amount of MP you have for casting magic. However, it never felt like I had loads of magic to spare. No, it actually felt like this was what the base amount of MP should have been. Magic is borderline unusable without this item because of how little MP you'll have.
What a strange design decision. Like, I mean, as someone that's played Dark Souls 1 and 3, right? Magic is not necessarily the forefront of people's builds. Yes, you can do some Manus Catalyst, Dark Sorcery stuff in 1. Yes, you can do some Deep Sorcery, some maybe Crystal Sorcery shenanigans in 3, right? But realistically, it's still usable in a capacity, especially if you spec into it. It quintuples, it 5x's your mana gauge. Whoa. I don't know. In a vacuum looking at this, unless there were hints or something, unless there's something that I'm missing, just assuming that in a vacuum, right, that you look at this and it 5x's your magic output or magic maximum MP, right? That's wild from a game design standpoint. That is a very high number. I could understand maybe 2x for a late game item, maybe 3x if I was feeling cheeky, but 5x, and I think that's also mitigated by, well, this felt like the base amount of MP that you were supposed to have, right? So I'm kind of mixed on that design decision. I'd be very interested to hear the Kingsfield veterans, their thoughts and opinions on this.
When I first got it, I could only cast Fireball once, maybe twice, before needing to restore it.
Right.
So yeah, kind of a wild choice on FromSoft's part to make such an essential item like this hidden and missable right at the very start.
Yeah, that's
part
wild.
Part of me hates it, but part of me loves it. It's moments like these where it really does feel like the developers had a fuck you attitude. This is our game. Yes, it's unfair. Deal with it or move on. And with that, say goodbye to the surface. We are going underground and into the ancient city. More than anything, this is a descent, and we eventually get pretty deep. As a rule of thumb, if you're going down, you're probably going the right way. However, it's time to talk about the combat and gameplay. I've put it off long enough. This is a first-person dungeon crawler. Now, I don't want to repeat myself too much from my other Kingsfield video, but essentially, this game is very similar to Kingsfield 1. And just like that game, there are two words that perfectly describe the combat: clunky and slow.
Why do the models go this hard?
What the Kingsfield experience is like, and it's part of why I think most people might find this game unbearable at times. You move slow and you turn even slower. This is what it looks like to fully turn around. If the idea of doing this yourself is upsetting, this game is definitely not for you. Clearly, I was able to tolerate this, and it even grew on me over time, but I wouldn't blame anyone wanting to pass on the game for this alone. Back to the combat.
I think it's the motion blur. Why do these models go so hard? Like the skeletons have the little Jabba and stuff. Like, wow, like this game for PS2 era goes hard. Then again, I guess I remember things like Force Unleashed came out on PS2, so it was actually a very powerful system for the time. Like, wow. Wow. That's interesting to turn around. I think if the motion blur could be turned off, I think I'd be fine with it. It's the motion. I never can stand motion blur. I turn it off in every game I can.
Most encounters will go one of two ways. The first is you attack, you back up, wait for your power meter to fill up again, attack, back up, and I think you get the idea.
Right.
The second is you Tokyo drift around them, because as slow as you turn, they turn even slower, and you can abuse this to stay behind them while you swing away. Now, not every encounter is this bare bones. Rooms with multiple enemies will force you to change things up by being clever, and ranged magic can also break up the monotony of melee combat. Also, there's just overall better AI than the last game. Some enemies will even attempt to block and dodge your attacks. Ironically, you can't do either of those things, but hey, I guess they were saving that for the Souls games.
That's so cool.
Basically the same as Kingsfield 1, just a bit refined across the board, especially when it comes to the quality of the animations. You might be thinking, hey, combat seems kind of rough. Why do people like these games? And I totally get that sentiment, but for me at least, it comes down to the joy of exploration and discovery that this game offers. You never know what's going to be around each corner. There are so many enemies to fight, items to find, and secrets to uncover. For Kingsfield 1, I said it was a first-person Metroidvania, and while I did get a little bit of pushback from some people, I'm going to stand by that description for this.
Hi, buddy.
game too. Yes, it's a bit of a stretch since it doesn't share all the characteristics that you might expect from a proper Metroidvania, but there's enough here that I think it fits. There are locked doors you'll have to...
I know we covered this in the last one. I don't think it properly fits. You do have to stretch the definition a bit, and even still, there just aren't things that line up. I take contention with the stance that this is a Metroidvania. That being said, I am also absolutely willing to defer to one Kingsfield and Metroidvania vets to discuss that. Metroidvanias just haven't been my thing. Like, sure, I like games like tangentially Zelda and Dark Souls, which aren't true Metroidvanias. So that's one of those things where I will defer to the experts. It's weird on YouTube, right? If I don't know everything, I don't want to know everything. There are things that I don't know and that I feel I can say, for my definition, this doesn't quite make sense. I would not say that. But if we can come to an accord, Pirates of the Caribbean meme, right? Come to an agreement between Metroidvania fans and Kingsfield fans or Souls, right? And it meets in the middle. Cool. Awesome. I don't, with my limited scope of understanding on Metroidvania and all the particulars of it, I don't think this falls into it though.
Come back to later once you have the right keys. There's backtracking, there's navigating with the struggle of where do I go next, and the entire world's interconnected. Exploration is what the Kingsfield series is really about, and I think it's at its best in this game. I mentioned in the last video how I was disappointed by how many areas were simply too similar visually to each other, but I can happily say that that's been more or less
they've definitely addressed
here.
that.
We have a wide range of environments, color palettes, and environmental details that expand beyond blank wall with a single texture. I still would get lost at times, but it no longer felt like the game's fault for failing to distinguish between areas. Back to my playthrough, I eventually made my way to this giant underground tower, but I want to give you guys the Kingsfield experience, so here's a brief summary of how I got there. First, I walked through some spider webs that made me turn even more slowly than normal. Then I found this guy who wanted to die, and I was like, yo, I feel that, so I killed him and took his key. I used that key on a door to a giant spider boss, which I beat by running around in a circle for 5 minutes. Then I explored. Then I found some undead soldiers, but a little bug ran off whenever I killed them, so I think we may have a Ratatouille situation on our hands. Then I explored some more, found some treasure, got punched in the face by a giant golem. Finally, I found an NPC who sold me a bow, but he gave me some weird advice about barrels being trapped. Obviously, I didn't listen to him though, because I'd found a lot of treasure in barrels at that point, and he was probably just lying. And after that, I finally made it to the central tower. I didn't realize this at the time, but what's cool about this tower is that it acts as a sort of central hub for the rest of the game, as you unlock more paths and loop back around to it now and then. In fact, I distinctly remember having this oh shit moment where I reached a lower level of the tower, looked up, and recognized that upper area as where I was hours before. Then I looked down and realized it went even lower still. Honestly, just great level design.
What an interesting game, actually. So think about games we think about nowadays. Oh, we need this vast open world. Or even think of like the philosophy of Elden Ring, even where you have this massive open world. And yes, there's encounters spread sparsely, but that's so that one encounter doesn't necessarily bleed into the other. How many times in Skyrim are you fighting something and then a dragon swoops down or a giant gets involved, right? That kind of thing. Or any open world game where you're fighting something, but something happens to pass on by and suddenly you're fighting a 3-4-way confrontation, right? So that's why Elden Ring is split up in the way it is as far as I understand it. And you look at this, it's fascinating to consider that, yes, this is Kingsfield, the ancient city, right? What's the focal point of it? The ancient city. Oh, this tower is the focal point of the ancient city, and you have everything that seems, at least from what I understand, tangential around it, right? You're circling this tower going down. Yes, you have some outside areas. It seems like you started on a bridge near the city, and then you went into that the area where you get the bracelet and stuff. You get to see the introduction to this being a bleak world, a hopeless world, and then you dive in, and you just, this is the focal point. So they're not having to waste resources on having this massive open world. They're not having to waste resources on making sure all these locales and climate change things, fit in there, right? Like, does Caelid look the same thing like we start the game? Look the same as the Forbidden Waste? Look the same as Farum Azula? No, they are their own locales and own locations for all intents and purposes. And that requires a lot of time, care, and effort to plan. Alternatively, this is the ancient city, a dungeon crawl down this tower in the ancient city. What I'm trying to get across is sometimes keeping it simple, keep it simple, stupid, right? Kiss. Sometimes that can really work in your benefit if you take what you're going to do and you run with it, right? You can, games like Yu-Gi-Oh! Magic the Gathering, right? You can have multiple engines in a single deck, and sometimes it leads to this tier 0 monster, right? But what happens if you just take an archetype and you augment it? So say like, I don't know, Shadal, right? Or branded, and you just augment it with certain things, and does that not make it run further, right? Or Magic the Gathering, right? What do? I play Tron, Urza Mine, Power Plant, and Tower. If I don't hit 7 mana by turn 3, I just scoop. I'm not playing that game. They don't want to play that game. Let's just save each other some time, right? But the whole thing is, I'm going to just completely out mana ramp them. That's the whole point of Tron. I am going to have like what, 3 to every one of your mana or something like that. I don't know. Someone can give me a dissertation down below. Yes, I play Magic the Gathering tangentially. I play Modern and I play Tron. I am in fact that guy. But no, this is, they took what they did well. They took what they wanted to do. They made it the focal point, and they built everything to support it. And they got to save. They could probably, even if they had to despawn things up above or despawn things down below or spawn things in as you move down, they can use that in game design because you're only at, say, you know, the second tier down, right? You're not at the bottom. You're not in this area. You're not in this area. But the player will never actually see that, right? Until they're near there. So it allows you to, kind of like how islands are a favorite of game makers, right? Because it provides a natural barrier for the play space. Similar concept. You have a natural play space that allows you to use smoke and mirrors to help make sure you're not bogging down your game with this massive open world or features that the player isn't even going to get to without much travel, right? And allow you to focus on where the player's actually at. Gaming has always been smoke and mirrors. It always has been. It just has become a lot more pronounced because now we have a lot more open world areas, a lot more standardized features and stuff, and a lot more homogenized experience from AAA and quadruple A studios that things like this are a rarity now. This is why games like Lethal Company, this is games why Helldivers, right? Why they take off. They understand what they're doing. They understand the intent. They understand the goal, and they're going to run with it.
Somewhat related, one of the big things that I think separates Kingsfield the Ancient City from its predecessors is how it plays with verticality. No longer is it just endless hallways. We finally have all these large environments
Blighttown
that
had
explore the third
verticality
dimension in interesting ways on the micro room-to-room scale, as well as the macro world design scale. There's a real sense of depth. Kind of reminds me of this one game from 2009 that also had lots of verticality.
Hi, Demon Souls.
So after taking in the sights of the tower, I pushed on deeper into the dungeon. And I mentioned this earlier, but this is a great opportunity to really stress how this game's charm, for me, lies in the fact that you never know what's coming. It could be something bizarre just as easily as it could be something beautiful and melancholy. For example, as I went just a bit further, I stumbled across straight up xenomorphs from Alien. Like, sure, why not? Cool. But once I got over that shock, I was rewarded with something even better. Up until now, I had mostly just been going down, deeper and deeper, but then I found a set of stairs going up, and they kept going up and up and up until finally I reached the end, which was a forest on the surface.
That's so cool.
I took a minute just to look around and take in the colors and the environmental details. It felt like I was suddenly playing a different game. A happier game.
That's so cool.
You need brief pockets of color and humanity in games like this. The Soul series nails this as well. The world is never entirely lost, and you'll always find at least a few NPCs hanging on to hope, along with the natural beauty of the world alongside them. Kingsfield is an extremely lonely experience, but moments like this do a lot to help alleviate that feeling at least a little. Now, let's talk about fake walls.
Before we get into fake walls, I'm going to tangent really quick on the enemy variety and enemy design. There are a lot of enemies in this. How many times have you played a game and you're like, God, this is just a reskin of this enemy, or this is just this enemy but slightly to the left, right? There's a lot of enemy variety in this that we've seen so far. That's so refreshing to see, especially nowadays.
Fresher since I talked about it in the other Kingsfield video, fake or illusory walls have been a staple of the Souls series for a while, but it comes from the old school tradition that began in Kingsfield. In the Kingsfield games, the way they work is by you pressing the X or interact button while facing a wall, and sometimes you're rewarded with the wall sliding away to reveal a hidden room. In Kingsfield 1, I talked about how tedious this process was due to the fact that there were simply so many blank walls, and the fake ones were placed seemingly at random. So the end result was a lot of playtime pressing my face against walls and mashing X. I'm happy to say that Kingsfield the Ancient City does a much better job at handling this side of the game. In short, there are just far fewer walls that could even have secrets behind them, and that's due to the level design. This game has a lot more rooms where parts of the wall would stick out, or you'd be in some sort of cave with uneven or angled walls. Any wall that wasn't just flat and vertical would never have a secret behind it, and realizing that saved me a lot of time. On top of that, I found that most of the secrets felt less random than last time. Sometimes I would just look at a wall, feel that something was off due to its placement, and
Right.
walk up to it to be rewarded with a hidden room. And if that's not enough, there are even 2 items that can significantly help with your secret finding endeavors. The first is a full 3D map of the entire game,
Oh, that's
and the second
cool.
is a necklace that highlights any fake walls in your sight. Ironically though, I believe both of these are behind fake walls themselves, so
Right.
there's a good chance you'll never find them if you're already struggling. You might be thinking,
I think that there could be some contention between Kingsfield veterans from older Kingsfield veterans and this one, right? So Kingsfield technically 2 and now Kingsfield 4, right? The ancient city. And where I can see both lines of logic here. One is, well, you should have to know where this is. You should have to know where exactly, to find these invisible walls, right? And it rewards your game knowledge versus the other is, well, it's a lot less random, right? Unless it is a perfectly vertical surface, it will not have a hidden wall behind it. And I think I think both of these are valid. I think that gets down into like kind of a debate. Like you could have an honest debate on this for hours, honestly, realistically, on the fundamental game design, why it's good, why each of them are bad. Each of them's good, each of them's bad, why, these could work in another setting. I think that there is an argument for both of these. And at least considering where the modern gaming marketplace is at, I think that Kingsfield the Ancient City is the natural progression of where players were at and where players eventually will end up to where we have, Dark Souls 3, where we just have walls that you're like, yeah, this is, yeah. So it's very interesting to consider the evolution of illusory walls, not only from Kingsfield, but into Demon Souls, into Dark Souls 1, into Dark Souls 2, into Dark Souls 3, into Elden Ring, right? Very fascinating.
this sort of help goes too far in trivializing all the secrets, but I actually think it's fine because you get them right near the end of the game anyway, so it's more just a tool for the completionists out there. Alright, that's enough about walls, let's talk about the traps here. Remember when I said exploration was the focus of this game? Well, all the traps you have to deal with are a close second. There are just so many fun ideas here. Oh look, there's a skeleton ringing a bell. I wonder what that does. Oh my god, no.
You
There's
would
also
not
this one
see
where
that
you open
today.
a chest, it poisons you, and then the treasure inside is just an antidote
That's
for that
so
poison.
cool.
Stuff like this is honestly just funny as hell. My personal
I think that that's such a W for these games. I think Dark Souls would be so much cooler if they had more chest placements, but some of these were just jape and joke chests, right? Having like one of my favorite features in like Majora's Mask Randomizer, right, is adding in those frozen chests, right? Like, oh god, I finally got up here, I got into here, I'm gonna open this chest, and it's just a trap chest, right, where it just freezes you like Ganon's Castle in Ocarina of Time. And I think that can add so much charm to a game to the point we have randomizers adding that stuff in. I think it's super cool, and it's a shame we really don't see it beyond the occasional mimic. And even then, in Elden Ring, as far as I know, not going into the DLC, right? I've never seen a mimic in Elden Ring. There were the weird smoke chests that sent you to like Caelid and sent you up north, right? There were, a few of those smoke chests that teleport you, those trap chests. But for all intents and purposes, there were no mimics. And if anything, I feel that amplified the anxiety I had with Elden Ring.
favorite is how this entire room drops out from under you and you fall into piranha-infested water.
Nice.
Real classic stuff here. Side
Classy.
note, this trap takes place in what is basically the alpha version of Sen's Fortress, right
Nice.
down to the snake men nearby. So
Yeah, I
many
see
areas
it.
in this game are punctuated by these little memorable encounters where you feel the devs are just messing with you, but in a fun way. There were traps in Kingsfield 1, but here I really feel like FromSoft made it a priority and part of the identity of the game itself.
I'm sad
It
we
really
don't
is
have
a
this
shame
now.
we never got another Kingsfield
Yeah.
because I would have loved to see how they cranked up the nonsense even more. Moving on, I can't believe it's taken me this long to mention, but we gotta talk about the glue that holds everything together, the vibes, or more specifically, the music. It's hard to describe, but Kingsfield music has a very distinctive feel to it, and it definitely enhances the mysterious mood of the game. You'll be walking along in the dark, it's silent except for your footsteps, and then, out of the darkness, you hear it.
It goes hard. Music is so important to gaming. Look at that. Look at that. Okay, we're going to rewind that for a sec. Gaming is all smoke and mirrors. What is that? That is a trapped wall that clips through the back wall, right? Through the wall is the trap face asset clips through it to fire an arrow at you, right? It's all just smoke and mirrors. And that's, I think, what gave older games a lot of charm is they either embraced it or they had clever tricks to hide it that, unfortunately, a lot of AAA and quadruple A games nowadays don't have the ability to really do, or they don't really care to do, either or. And oh God, music. A game is so much better by the music. If you play a game, for example, and you turn the soundtrack off completely, there's only so much enjoyment you're gonna get. As somebody that had parents, right, who they could not stand, the Pokemon GBA DS era music, they just couldn't, and that's completely fair to them, right? So I played games for a number of years just on mute, and it wasn't until I started playing games like Halo and stuff, wasn't until I started playing games with really good soundtracks and listening to the music and hearing it add to the experience that I really fell in love with a lot of games a lot more. Fire Red has some banger tracks in it. And they're absolutely on the same topic. There are absolutely games that I've played that the music has felt off, that the music just doesn't make sense, that it feels like a flub, and it's not as enjoyable. You have to understand that music is a core component of games, and if your soundtrack is not up to par, if your soundtrack fails, your game's going to suffer. Very cool, though. Very cool soundtrack.
This is Kingsfield. This is what it's about. Exploring old dungeons, juking skeletons, and having music like this blast the whole time. It really is a unique experience. Speaking of things I should have mentioned by now, this game, as well as Kingsfield 1, has no loading screens. You can play it start to finish without ever being taken out of the game.
That's wild.
Not only is this worth mentioning for the technical achievement that it is, especially the first one in 1995, but it's also notable because there aren't even cutscenes after the intro either.
Wild.
That means that you're always in control, and the only thing that really stops the action is talking to NPCs or pausing the game. Think about how this affects the process of coming across visual spectacles or bosses. There's something so odd and low-key about the feeling of wandering into a boss room and then you just fight them right away.
No
bosses
fog wall?
aren't
Really?
events like they might be in other games. Here, it's just another guy to kill. And this is probably giving FromSoft a bit too much credit, but this does make the entire experience feel a bit more grounded than it might have been otherwise. You really are just a dude wandering around the dungeon, and both your deaths and victories aren't framed as big deals. It's just another moment in the ancient city. So this game is pretty cool,
I can see that.
Not just because it has an ice area. It's actually because this area contains big ice guys that run up and punch you. And this is good. As I explored this area, I found a lot of frozen things, including this dwarf blacksmith. I pressed on until I reached a lava area nearby where I got to fight some fire Pokemon, and then I reached a giant demon boss. I attacked him for a bit, he died, and then I went back to the ice zone to see that it was now all unfrozen, including our blacksmith friend who returned back to his home. So with that, let's talk about item durability. Long story short, it doesn't really matter. It goes down over time, but you find new gear so frequently that it's almost a complete non-issue. In fact, I didn't even notice it was a mechanic until about halfway through the game. Whenever you find a new weapon or piece of armor, 9 times out of 10, it's just a straight upgrade, so why bother repairing? However, if you do want to repair, the game has an interesting idea for handling that. Our blacksmith here can repair any weapon or piece of armor. This is free to do, but you have to wait in real time anywhere from 4 to 10 minutes for your gear to get fixed. So you drop it off, and then your options are to wait in the room or come back later. This is strange and seemingly pointless, but honestly, it's perfectly on brand for Kingsfield. I've just come to expect weird, quirky things like this as
Makes
normal.
sense. I
However,
like
before we move on, I do have to note that you can actually repair multiple pieces of gear at once. In fact, you could repair your entire inventory in one go if you wanted to. Now, given this mechanic of waiting in real time, I think it's fair to assume that this process could take hours. After all, if you have 20 swords and they each take 5 minutes to repair, it seems like you'd be waiting 100 minutes, right?
Right.
Well, actually, they all repair at the same time. So in that example I just gave, it would only take 5 minutes for all of your items to be repaired. Thus, I am proposing the lore theory that the blacksmith is just a dick. If I have to wait the same amount of time for one sword versus 20 swords being repaired, that must mean that he has the ability to repair weapons instantly or near instantly, but instead he chooses to hold on to them and make me wait. I'm open to lore feedback, but I think this is a pretty solid theory. Let me know. In the same way
that might be a bug. I don't know. I would be very interested to know if that's a bug or if that was entirely intentional. It's like how Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, pickpocketing, especially items over a certain value, will just never work because of bugs in the coding. This is why you go things like unofficial patches and stuff. Reasonably, okay, so there's a couple things that when I hear that, I think about. Reasonably, yes, if I were to drop off multiple pieces of equipment, it would be each item equals the same increment. But being able to deposit multiple and it taking the same time, that feels like multiple items are taking up the same increment. So that almost feels like that's a bug, right? Where the extra items after the first aren't compiled in the timer or the time that it would take. So if you have 20 items, right, and it takes 5 minutes, your item 1 registers for 5 minutes, but items 2 through 20 don't register for that. I would be very curious if that is an intended feature or if that was a bug, because this is something that reasonably I would look at and I would ask if this is a bug.
That durability is an interesting idea on paper that ultimately doesn't really affect the game. Let's talk about 2 more, weapon level and magic level. So every individual weapon and magic spell has a level associated with it. Everything starts at level 1, and as you use it, it goes up to level 3. With weapons, getting one to level 3 not only increases its damage, but it also gives you a special magic attack. And yes, this even includes your fists.
Nice.
With magic, it's the same basic idea. Leveling up attack spells increases their damage, and leveling up utility spells increases their potency. But it actually even goes a step further, with spells sometimes getting bigger, having a different animation, or even gaining new abilities altogether. For example, at level 3, my healing spell gave me the ability to slow down enemies with melee attacks for a few seconds after using it. Now, this all sounds awesome, and it is, but the problem is that you'll never see these unless you really go out of your way to grind. Like I mentioned earlier, I found new gear often, so it was rare if I even made it to level 2, let alone level 3 with a weapon. And the same was true for spells, as they were also found fairly often, and new spells were almost always better than old ones. There's a pretty steady power increase for each new thing you find. These are great ideas, and I really appreciate all the effort that went into making 3 different versions of each spell, but it's a little confusing how much of a non-factor it is when playing the game normally. The only spell I got to level 3 naturally was my healing spell. To give some more perspective on how bad the numbers are, I had this meteor spell that I really liked, so I wanted to see how long it would take to max out. I found a boss near the end of the game that endlessly summoned skeletons, so it seemed like the perfect place to just grind it out. I started at 90,000 experience and I ended with 123,000. Each skeleton was worth only 100 EXP. So yeah, you can do the math. It took a pretty long time. Was it
90,000 to 123? You'll never have a phone in your pocket. What do you mean? I have a phone in my pocket. I have a calculator in my pocket. Lay off me. So 90,000 to 123,000. That's what, 33,000? 33,000 divided by 100. 330 skeletons is what I'm coming up with, unless I did my math wrong. Still, that's going to take a hot minute. So here's my take on this. I think that's actually intentional, though, because as Iron Pineapple is saying, right, you do get a steady power creep. You don't really have to repair your gear because you just find new gear. But the catch-22 is that if you find new gear, you don't level up your old gear. So I think that that's an interesting catch-22 to kind of think on, because it's super fascinating that all of these weapons, or all these weapons, as he's saying, right, in a vacuum, that have these extra levels and extra attacks to them, right? And realistically, your healing in any game is going to be one of your biggest skills, and that's why Skyrim makes it a little slower, right? Because, you know, you use your healing a lot in that game, a metric ton of healing. And, you know, in this game, it sounds like, you know, he was able to use it enough that he leveled up to 3 naturally, where things like Meteor, it's taking him 330 skeletons, approximately, to level up. So I think that that's an interesting system that it's actually very on brand as well. You have to go out of your way to find these secrets. If you don't do the thing in the starting city, you don't get the bracelet that quintuples your magic. You can just miss it. Or you can grind it out, you can immerse yourself in the world and be rewarded. It's like no different than Final Fantasy XIV. The game will respect your time, but you got to put in the time for it to respect, right? This actually also reminds me of Lord of the Rings: The Third Age, the fan canon-y Final Fantasy RPG kind of one, right? Where if you want to get your max skills, there's certain skills that you have to level up, and oh boy, is it a grind, even on hard. Like there's skills that I've never even seen in that game because the grind is just a lot.
Worth it? Probably not. You know, since the game was essentially over at that point.
Right.
But it does look pretty cool. All right, before we get to the final section, I wanted to go over a few lingering observations and thoughts that I had. First, just like Kingsfield 1, teleporting exists in this game, but it's a little different. You still place these colored guide stones into statues that act as teleport locations, but this time you can only teleport when standing on these magic circles on the ground.
Okay.
I like this change because it slightly increases
Mudman.
retention during moments where you might have otherwise just teleported away. Next thing, check out this flooded city. I was sort of blown away by this whole area and how closely it mirrors New Londo.
It kinda
even has
does.
the backstory of people
I can see
flooding it
it.
on purpose to try and contain some great evil and darkness.
Right.
Pretty neat.
That's
Up
cool.
next, I really love how there are all these hidden treasures in the environment that reward attentiveness. Like maybe you look up, notice something stuck to the ceiling, and shoot it down. Or maybe you see a magic crystal stuck in a spider web, so you have to burn it down and then figure out where it fell down to.
Right.
Good stuff. There
That's
are
so
tons
cool.
of little secrets like this, and I just think they're so much fun. And lastly, yes, this game does have a swamp area that
My
poisons you.
God.
So we finally get to see the FromSoft we know and love starting to take shape. And with that, it is finally time to talk about how to get to the end of the game. Step 1. As part of this big snake temple, we find the corpse of the leader of the expedition from the beginning of the game. And next to him is the lawful blade. We'll take this for later. Step 2, we find all 4 keys to unlock the chests in the forest and then open them to receive 4 black eyes.
Sun
Step
Nidhogg
3,
eye.
we take those eyes to a big door behind the king's throne and they open it up for us. Step
Interesting.
4, we enter, go up a long flight of stairs, and find a magic crystal surrounded by ancient stone golems and roots. Then the lawful blade floats out of our inventory,
Oh, no.
plunges into the crystal, and
There it is.
transforms into the famous Moonlight Sword. Yes, that Moonlight Sword.
That's so
the sword
cool.
also gets an absurd orbital strike magic attack, which is very fun. Before we tackle the final boss though, the last thing we need to do is backtrack and find all the pieces of Mew's armor, which were floating inside these energy orbs around the map. This isn't necessary, but it's the best armor in the game, so why not?
It's cool,
With the
why
Moonlight
not?
Sword, we can finally break through and get them all. And with that, we can march on over to the final area in the deepest part of the dungeon. I place the Idol of Sorrow on the pedestal, and then...
What a suit! Like the sound just makes sense here. I love this. This is super immersive. What a cool sequence. A little bit of frame rate drop, but I mean, it's a retro console, right? It's PS2.
So yeah,
gotta
we
give
go
it some
even
slack.
deeper. This entire area is gross and trippy. It's like we're inside of some giant monster with the floor, walls, and ceiling all pulsating and fleshy with monsters coming out and walking around. I got heavy reverse osmosis Jones vibes, which coincidentally
Oh, I
came
can
out the
see it
same
here.
year as this
Yeah.
game, just a few months before.
That's
There
cool.
are enemies everywhere. It's a mess. There's even dragons just flying around, which I guess was the perfect time for me to
Seeking
pull out
arrows?
my bow with homing arrows.
Oh,
but
that's
I
so
finally
cool.
made my way to this guy half melted into a throne of dark material at the heart of it all. 3 hits from the Moonlight Greatsword, he turns to stone, crumbles away, and that's it. We beat the game. So if you've been curious about Kingsfield and you think you can put up with all the clunkiness and all the jank, Kingsfield the Ancient City is probably the best place to start. It really is an experience, and a video like this can only go so far in conveying what that experience feels like. It's more than the sum of its parts, and fans are still talking about it to this day for a reason. Will FromSoft ever return to this series? Honestly,
no.
not a chance. It's just too niche for how big they are these days, and the original people who worked on the game have moved on long ago. I think there's something special here, and while it's a shame we'll never see FromSoft's attempt at another entry, that doesn't mean that they're the only ones who can make it work. I'm very curious to see another developer's attempt at modernizing the series without straying too far from the idiosyncrasies that make it special. Yes, this game is very interesting as a way of connecting the dots between FromSoft then and now,
Right.
but it's also just a wild game in its own right, and I hope I've done an okay job at sharing why I think it's special and still worth looking at.
I thought this is an
Thanks for
amazing
watching.
video. I thought this was great personally.
This video has an interesting sponsor. It's Wizards of the Coast, which if you didn't know, is the company that owns Dungeons and Dragons. They have a new game coming out today, and it's an online co-op
Oh,
hack and slash
no.
looter minus the shooter. At first, I was wondering why they
I've
reached out
heard
to me,
things
but then I
about
saw the
Dark
game had a roll
Alliance.
button, and it all made sense. So here was my experience playing with a few friends. Nice. 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 You guys see that? Time for my super move. Time for my super move that always wins.
Wait, you can just spam that?
It's my ultimate.
That's so much damage.
So chill.
Come on, man. Come on, jump up. Jump up, bro. Come on.
What are you doing, dude?
No, no.
All right.
There you go. I got
I think we need to increase the difficulty substantially. What are you doing?
super jump attack.
I love this. This is shenanigans, hijinks.
Can you just keep flipping them?
I'll be like breakfast, dude.
Yeah, you're making pancakes. So yeah, if you've got a couple friends and want to button mash your way through some goblins, click on the link in the description and check out Dark Alliance.
I don't even think they're
Fine.
updating it
How do you
anymore.
get a D&D player to go out with you?
Oh no.
You roll a persuasion check.
Okay.
Is that right?
He was right, wasn't he?
Was that right?
No.
Wait, really?
Do you roll initiative?
You ask them for a D8.
Oh.
That was bad. That's dad joke material. God, what a cool, relaxed ad read. I like that it was saved towards the end of the video. I like that it wasn't a lot of just a bunch of talking points. I like that it was very just here. I'm talking about this. Bam, bam, bam. We're showing you some clips, showing you some gameplay. Yeah, if you want to smash your way through some goblins, do the thing, right? Very relaxed. I liked it. I thought it was actually really good. This was awesome. Thank you for this, Iron Pineapple. This was an epic video to watch and kind of just connect the dots from where FromSoft was, as you said, to where they are now. And I don't think we'll ever get another Kingsfield, at least not from FromSoft. I'd be very curious at an indie dev's attempt at something like this. I think that'd be super cool. And I think that it could really do well for an indie dev. I think that an indie dev could really kind of run with this formula, add a bunch of hijinks, Easter eggs, memes, shitposts, and really just make a great area, just make a great game. So thank you for this video. If you have not checked out Iron Pineapple, definitely go ahead and check it out. As always, in the description down below, you will see Iron Pineapple's channel, and you will see the original video. I do link the original channel, original video every single time I can. And yeah, definitely go check out Iron Pineapple because it's just awesome. Thank you everyone for watching. I definitely appreciate it. Let me know in the comments section. What are your thoughts? What do you think about Kingsfield? Did you know about this? Have you played Kingsfield? Are you a Kingsfield vet? Do you have something you'd like to share about Kingsfield? Let me know in the description down below. I'll see you all in the next one.